Hey team, Patrick here, and in today's lesson we're going to cover a fundamental of tennis, and I'm going to show you how to aim. Or I should say, I'm going to show you that you already know how to aim. As I like to say to my students, aiming should be something that is very natural and instinctive. This will allow you to rally if you're a beginner player starting out, or be better able to hit the ball away from your opponents if you're already playing competitive matches. Every time you hit a shot, there are 5 what we call ball characteristics that you can influence. You can change the height, you can change the depth, you can change the direction, you can change the speed, and you can change the spin. And they all kind of go in together to being able to hit our target out there on the court. But in today's lesson, we're going to concentrate on the directional element. So let's get into it. And starting off with an experiment here, and our goal is to hit the ball right down this middle channel that I've got marked out here. And you can do this, of course, in a rally situation. This would be a fantastic target to aim for, as if we can learn to hit down the middle, we can hit all of the other angles off of this. Most players assume that aiming is achieved through where their body is facing, so maybe the stance that they're using or where they are stepping, but it's actually simpler, and it's just where your strings are facing at contact. So the angle of your strings at contact with the ball will then fly off in this direction, and that's just a fact. And it's only a very small difference in where your racket is facing that will make a big difference to where the ball goes. And the further back you are on the court, the more exaggerated this is. It's why I say it has to be natural. You have to think the ball in a certain direction, as your mental image will control so much of what your body does. And you don't want to try and control the contact point, as the ball is only on your strings for such a short period of time that you cannot do this anyway. So it's the timing of your swing and how this relates to the contact point where you hit the ball in this arc around your body that changes the angle of your strings and where the ball will go. It's also why having this central channel is such a good practice, not to necessarily get the ball in there every time, but to use this as feedback, use this as a guide to make adjustments to your timing if needed. You might also need to over exaggerate to start with where you feel you're aiming if you're not hitting your target, as you need to what I call recalibrate where you feel you're aiming with where your strings are actually facing at contact. You also want to make sure you don't slow down and steer the ball like this in the direction of your target, as this will lead to tension, to shortening of the contact zone, and us pushing the ball. Like I said, we just want to use this as like a guide. It's a trial and error process. I can just change the timing on the next one to change the contact point. Now, I've got 3 channels effectively set up on the other side, but in reality, we don't need to be that precise. We just need to be able to hit either diagonal or straight of that center line, or what we call cross court or down the line in tennis. They're the only 2 directions. There's just varying degrees of diagonal or straight. And that would be our next practice, to be able to hit down the line or be able to hit cross court. And being able to rally cross court would be a great practice tactically, whether you're playing singles or doubles, and I'll explain why in a future video. So to hit a ball down the line, I need a contact point that is just slightly out in front of my body. So to hit a cross court ball, I need to be slightly further out in front of this point to change the angle of my strings. If my ball then goes crooked, if it goes offline, well, I know I was simply too far in front or too far behind. Something I want to stress is if you're hitting a down the line ball, yes, you're hitting later in the arc than a cross court ball, but never late. And you still want to be slightly out in front of your body here. A good way for me to explain it would be if I put my racket on the baseline here, where you can see my strings are facing straight. I'll use another racket here. So this grip on my racket is going to be like an arrow. A racket on the baseline here. This is going to be straight. And if I move my racket in front of the baseline, you can see the ball's going to go more cross court. If I move it behind the baseline, this would be like an inside out forehand. Well, the ball will now fly off in this direction. This is what it means to have good timing, the skill that you have to practice to control when you start your swing and then have your racket face lined up at contact to go towards your intended target. You want to make sure if you're in a rally situation or a point situation, you decide where you're going to aim early, and you want to aim on every single shot, whether it's a forehand or a backhand, as it just gives you that focus of where you're trying to hit. And this is something that I like to work on early on with my students. So to summarize this, it's not that if I'm hitting a down the line ball, for example, that I need to close my body position off here. I need to step across because now I can't use my body effectively, and ultimately I can override this anyway. If I have my racket out in front and my strings facing that way, I can get the ball to go that way anyway. I don't want to slow down or flick with my wrist coming into contact. I want a smooth acceleration of my racket with a stable wrist, as this will allow me to better control the contact point and where my strings are facing at contact. You need to go out and practice this. The pros are always working on hitting to certain targets, as this will give us that consistency, which ultimately is more important than other elements like power. Okay, right guys, hope this has helped to clear up any sort of misconceptions or misunderstandings around the topic of aiming and how directional control really works in tennis. If this video has helped, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future videos, and I'll see you on court in the next lesson. Cheers, guys.